Picture this. You're clinging to the freezing, precipitous cliffs of the Alps. The year, 1690. The air is dangerously thin, the wind is literally howling, and the stakes? Well, they absolutely could not be higher. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking one of history's most astonishing tales of underdog survival. We're drawing directly from historical accounts of what eventually became known as the Glorious Return.
Okay, let's dive into this. 347. That is the exact number of Waldensian fighters left clinging to a jagged mountain peak known as the Sugarloaf. They were totally out of food. They were out of ammunition, they were starving, freezing, and just utterly exhausted.
Now, contrast that tiny number with this one, 22,000. We're talking about a massive combined force of well-fed, heavily armed French and Savoyard troops completely surrounding the base of that mountain. The odds here aren't just bad, they are mathematically insurmountable.
So it's the morning of May 14th, 1690, on the Pont de Zucchero, or the Sugarloaf. After an agonizing 8-month siege, the Waldensians were quite literally at the end of the line. The French forces were so incredibly confident of victory that they actually had mule-driven wagons equipped with portable gallows waiting right in the valley below. They were ready to execute these 347 men the very next morning.
Facing what they firmly believed was their final dawn, their leader, a guy named Henri Arnaud, who actually served as both their military commander and their pastor, gathered his desperate men. He anchored them with this specific scripture from Psalm 68, really trying to prepare them mentally and spiritually for their imminent demise.
Section 1. Exile and the Impossible March. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly did this small band of men end up trapped on this desolate rock in the first place? Well, to understand the climax, we really have to look at the geopolitical dominoes that forced them here. Back in 1685, the French king, Louis XIV, revokes the Edict of Nantes, effectively outlawing Protestant worship to unify his state. By May 1686, French troops mercilessly purge the Waldensians from their Alpine homelands, and the survivors are exiled to Geneva in the dead of winter. It actually wasn't until August 1689 that a brave, pretty desperate force of 900 men began a brutal 130-mile march back home to reclaim their land.
Just look at the sheer devastation of that purge. It's staggering. We start with a really vibrant community of 14,000 Waldensians. 8,500 of them are thrown in prison. But because of starvation and disease, only 3,000 are even released for exile. By the time they finished that brutal winter trek to Geneva, less than 2,300 people remained alive. It's a massive, devastating human attrition rate. But from those survivors, a seriously tough fighting force emerges, dubbed the Invincibles. Henri Arnaud leads this fast-moving army back over the mountains. Their primary tactic? Sheer speed. They moved so fast they frequently outpaced the French troops sent to intercept them. But, the elements, the ambushes, and just pure exhaustion really took their toll. Out of the 900 who started, only 600 made it back to their valleys.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Winter Apocylia. Let's head back to the rugged mountain terrain, specifically the bitter winter of 1689, and a heavily fortified natural stronghold called Basilia. So, with 10,000 French troops hot on their heels, the Waldensians had to rely on some incredibly ingenious guerrilla survival tactics. First, they secured the easily defensible Basilia. Second, and this is truly clever, they unearthed a millstone that had been secretly buried in the sand to hide it from enemies. And third, they survived by scavenging unharvested grains, grinding them with that hidden millstone to make flour, all while holding off relentless attacks until the heavy snows finally forced the French to retreat for the winter.
But by mid-February, their scavenged food was entirely depleted. Starvation was literally days away. Then, what historical accounts call a miracle happens. A warm alpine wind, a chirraco, unexpectedly sweeps through and melts the snow. This reveals perfectly preserved, unharvested fields of corn, rye, and oats from the previous fall. To Henri Arnaud, this extreme environmental luck was absolutely nothing short of divine providence, keeping his men alive. But of course, spring arrives, and the French return. And this time, Louis XIV isn't taking any chances. He persuades the Duke of Savoy to supply an additional 12,000 troops. General Catinat now commands an overwhelming force of 22,000 men, marching directly toward a Waldensian force that, at this point, numbered fewer than 400.
Let's move to Section 3, the fog and the escape, and see how this all builds up. We are heading right back to the precipice of the Sugarloaf Mountain, where those 347 surviving men were trapped on May 14th.
Before they were completely boxed in, they faced this massive assault on May 2nd, right in the middle of a driving snowstorm. The Waldensians' tactical superiority and their use of the harsh terrain was just incredible. The attacking columns were completely repulsed. Hundreds of French and Savoyard troops lay dead, while the Waldensians suffered 0 casualties. Literally 0.
But look, tactics can really only take you so far against endless numbers. The French brought in artillery, bombarding the Waldensians until they were driven to the absolute final peak. By May 14th, the entrapment was absolute. 3 enemy regiments blocked the valley below, and 2 more regiments took the ridges above them. There was nowhere left to run.
So, night falls on what's supposed to be their last hours on Earth, and then a thick, dense fog rolls across the mountains. Enter Captain Philippe Tranpoulat, a Waldensian who actually grew up hunting these very peaks. He proposes a frankly suicidal plan. They would escape down the sheerest, most dangerous cliff face of the mountain, gambling that it was the one route the French wouldn't bother to heavily patrol.
The tension here is just unbelievable. The Waldensians stoke up their campfires, leaving them blazing so the French think they're still dug in. Then, crawling blindly, hand to shoulder, the 347 men begin to literally slip over the edge of the abyss, navigating the precipice right through the well-defended enemy lines in the dead of night.
Then, suddenly, disaster. As they're creeping through the dark, one fighter loses his footing, he needs both hands to grab the cliff, and he drops a metal kettle. Clang! The sound echoes violently down the mountainside, completely shattering the silence of the night.
The entire escaping line completely freezes. Out of the fog, a French sentry yells out, "Qui vive? Who's there?" Silence. The Waldensians are literally holding their breath, their hearts pounding in their throats. Receiving no answer, the sentry miraculously dismisses the noise as just falling rocks. And the impossible escape continues. Section 4. A shocking geopolitical reversal. By the time the morning sun burns off that fog and the French march up to the summit to claim their victory, they find nothing but empty campfires. The Waldensians were already a half-day's journey away, entirely denying the French the total annihilation they were so sure of.
And here is where history delivers a massive, massive plot twist. While the French are out hunting the survivors, global politics shift overnight. The Duke of Savoy, who had just supplied 12,000 troops to crush the Waldensians, unexpectedly switches his allegiance to align with Protestant nations against France. He offers the surviving Waldensians complete freedom if they turn around and fight for him. They agree, and they actually end up helping rid the kingdom of the very French army that had been hunting them.
So, the crucial point is how the people who actually lived this processed what they'd just accomplished. Looking at Pastor Arnaud's own historical memoirs, he spent years reflecting on the sheer impossibility of their survival against a 50-to-1 disadvantage, the starvation, and those bitter elements. Arnaud wrote, "How else but by the hand of God can this be explained? For Arnaud, the unharvested grain, the snowstorm that stopped the assaults, and that perfectly timed fog that shielded their escape, they weren't just coincidences. He maintained an unshakable belief that they had been guided and protected by the very words he preached from Psalm 68 on that dark night."
Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought to consider. Looking at all the data and the historical accounts we've unpacked in this explainer today, how do you interpret this? Was the survival of the Waldensians on the Sugarloaf the result of brilliant, fast-paced military strategy? Was it an incredible string of extreme environmental luck? Or does it simply showcase an unyielding human spirit anchored by deep faith? It's a pretty spectacular intersection of all three in one of history's ultimate underdog stories.